So it has been said you can have brilliant ideas, but if you can't get them across, your ideas won't get you anywhere. So it is very true that unless and until a person is able to express his ideas either in writing or orally, they have no meaning. And it has also been said you cannot not communicate. This is grammatically wrong sentence. In other words, it simply refers to you always communicate. Whether you intend or you do not intend, you communicate. And this is true because even if we are silent, we are not speaking to anyone, we communicate through our body, movements, postures, gestures, facial expression, and thus all the time we are communicating to the outside worlds. And people try to interpret the incoming information in the frame of reference of their previous experiences. And that's why it has been said, words have no meaning, people have meaning. That means each individual try to interpret the incoming information in the light of his or her own experiences and thus give different meaning to the same input which is provided to the person. And when we talk in terms of oral communication, two skills are important, that is speaking and listening. And when you try to speak to somebody, it is your whole personality comes into play. Not only the words which you use, they get interpreted, but your facial expression, your gestures, your body movement, which accompany the words, they in totality get interpreted and the meaning is derived by the receiver or the audience to the message. And that's why when we talk in terms of the effectiveness of communication, three things are very important. The verbal communication or the verbal content, the words which you use, they have an impact up to 7% on the effectiveness of communication. The tonal quality, what you say, how you say it, has an impact up to 38%. Now, for example, I use simple word sit here. There's one, the words would remain the same. Sit here. Sit here. Now you can see that when you change your tonal quality, the message is interpreted differently. Simple sit here, a very pleasant message which has been exchanged. Sit here, that means you are ordering somebody to sit and occupy a position. So the tonal quality which accompany a particular message, that has an effect on the communication. Non-verbal behavior, as I said, has an impact up to 55%. Thus, you can say that verbal communication is only the tip of the iceberg. The remaining communication is non-verbal. And now we'll shift our focus to principles of effective speaking. Some of these I covered yesterday also, but today we'll take into account each and every principle in little detail. The very first principle, when you try to communicate, know thy subject or know thy topic on which you are going to speak. And as I said yesterday, knowledge is doubling every 7 to 10 years, and the shelf values of the degrees is declining very fast. We took an example of computer science where the shelf value of the degree is less than 1 year. And if a person doesn't have the knowledge of the current developments in the subject, the person cannot do justice to that topic. And likewise, in other disciplines, a person needs to be thorough with the concepts, the principles, the theories, and only then he'll be able to satisfy the audience or the learners who are sitting in the classroom situation. Know thy objectives. That means you should be very clear of why a particular topic is being taught and what a student will be able to do at the end of unit of instruction. As I said, whether a student will be able to define stress or explain the concept of stress. Now, if it is simple definition, that means factual information which requires rote memorization on the part of the learner, that is required. But when we say explain the concept of stress, it is not only the definition which is to be rote memorized. The person should be able to explain the concept in his own words. The person should be able to give examples when we say explain the concept of stress. So he should be able to give examples. Likewise, when we say differentiate between stress and strain. So the person should have the concept of stress, concept of strain, and he should be able to differentiate by identifying the similarities and the differences in the concept of stress and strain and may exemplify that. Think of when we talk in terms of a principle, say Ohm's law, Charles' law, Joule's law. Now, when the knowledge is there of a particular law, when the person is able to apply that knowledge in a given situation. Now, if I have learned the law, then I must be able to apply that in the world of work or in the real life. So a teacher who is communicating in the classroom situation needs to highlight where the principle is applicable. And if that law can be demonstrated, then it will have better effect on the learner and there will be greater learning when the law is demonstrated. Now, for example, we have been talking about that when you put your hand against the wall, what happens? For every action, there's equal and opposite reaction. If person remembers the law, then he can say the force which you apply on the wall, the same force is applied on your hand. So likewise, in day-to-day life, when we talk about you are alighting from the bus, you are taking example of the inertia of movement. When you are shooting a target under the water, you are taking care of the law of refraction. So these laws which you learn as a part of the discipline, they get applied. And a good communicator is one that tries to capitalize how a student is going to learn and what is it that is expected of him. Accordingly, he tried to provide the experiences to the learner. So when you try to provide those experiences which will facilitate learning, then the learning is maximized and your audience remains satisfied and thus your communication remains effective. So in addition to that, I've just talked about the application. But then the higher level ability to analyze. If I want to develop this, say for example, I give a program written in C++ and I ask the student to locate the fault in that program written in C++. Or I give a case study to the student and I pose few questions where he need to analyze the situation and find out which rule will be applicable. This is again ability to analyze, ability to apply a given rule in a given situation. So then comes your ability to evaluate. So you are giving a situation, you say select an appropriate engine of for a given sports utility vehicle. And here the person is going to compare the strengths and weaknesses of various engines and then he'll select the engine. This is ability to evaluate. Then comes create. So you are giving write a program in visualbasic.net. Now this would require the creation part. Or you say plan a program for the needs identified for the teachers for the faculty development program. So he designs an appropriate training program based upon the needs which have been identified. Now this requires ability to create. So accordingly, if your objectives are to develop skills, then you have to provide real hands-on experience to your student. So know thy objectives is important because your selection of content, selection of method, selection of media, and selection of evaluation will depend upon the nature of objectives. The third principle, as we discussed yesterday also, know your audience. Now here, the teacher must have a thorough understanding of the requirements of the learners. If they are first year student, the breadth and scope would be different. If they are fourth year student, the same topic being taught to fourth year students, the breadth and scope of that topic would vary. The depth to which you will go for in that topic would also differ from first year to fourth year. So you have to take account of, are you going to teach the first year student? Are you going to teach the final year student? Because the previous knowledge which they bring to the classroom, the fourth year student has the previous knowledge of electrical engineering which he has acquired for the past 3 years. But a student who is in the first year has only the knowledge of physics. So you have to see what kind of knowledge they are bringing to the situation which can be related to what you are teaching in the classroom situation. Or you are also concerned with whether my audience or whether the learners are interested in the topic or not interested or disinterested in the topic. Your job becomes very difficult when the audience is not interested in listening to you on the topic which you are going to deal in the class. And this is most of the time what is happening in the classroom situation. A special effort needs to be made by the teacher to arouse the necessary interest level and sustain that interest during the period of 55 minutes or 1 hour or 50 minutes as the case may be. So what you can do to create interest? You can start with a quote, you can start with a puzzle, you can start with a story, you can start with a problem which is very, very complex, and students get motivated to know how this problem can be tackled, and you can teach that how to solve that problem, right? And here you can also use media to your advantage. You show something with the help of animation, or you bring a video clip which poses the problem, and that's why you can get attention of your student and then arouse the necessary interest in that. You can also make generous use of examples from the day-to-day life to create interest or to build the relevance so that the interest is sustained in the topic you are going to deal. Then comes your social context, the rural-urban divide. Or there are people who are from different medium of instruction, or the people who belong to different cultures. So as a teacher must take account of that you use variety of examples from different contexts, rural context, urban context. You also give examples from the variety of cultures that are being experienced, but that will depend upon what kind of content you are dealing with, the subject you are teaching to the student. That will determine how you are going to create the relevance, how you are going to use that context to your advantage in the classroom situation. But it is very important that in addition to that, learning styles of the learners, they must be understood. No two individuals are alike. And when it comes to the question of learning a particular material, different people have different preferred style of learning. For example, few people who would see the things, they learn it. There are others who hear the things, they learn it. There are others who read through the things and they learn it. There are others who do the things and they learn it. One is the people who hear and learn. They are referred to as auditory learners. There are the people who see the thing. They are referred to as visual learners. The people who learn when they do the things, they are referred to as kinesthetic learners. So a teacher, a good communicator, when speaking in the classroom, needs to cater to the requirements of these three different groups. You need to identify what is the dominant style of learning in your classroom, whether the students are auditory learners, visual learners, verbal learners, or kinesthetic learners, and thus try to use multisensory experiences for the learner. You satisfy the one who are auditory learners. You try to satisfy who are the visual by integrating pictures, slides, posters, charts, diagrams, animation, simulation, etc. in your teaching. Or you use doing activities, that is where you involve the learners actively in the process of teaching learning, and you may give them problem solving, you give them a small group discussion, 10 minutes discussion, or you give them a case study, or you give them a numerical problem solving, or if it requires the actual manipulation of the machinery, equipment, or the tool, you provide that kind of a real experience, hands-on experience to your students so that kinesthetic learners' needs are satisfied. So you need to know your audience as much as you can by gathering information about them, by administering some of the psychological tests whereby you can get an idea, because you are teaching engineering primarily. So you must know whether the student who is there in the class has the aptitude for learning that, say for example, mechanical aptitude. The people who possess mechanical aptitude, there are greater chances that they'll excel in the field of mechanical engineering. A person who's good in verbal, then the person is likely to excel in either the literary study, the languages, or journalism, and so on. So if the person possesses the mathematical ability, that is called numerical aptitude, then there are chances that the person will excel in the field of engineering. Likewise, you have abstract reasoning. So engineers, they need to possess these aptitudes, and if they possess the aptitude, they would excel in their particular educational field, right? So take care of who are the people. Likewise, you can think of intelligence, the people who are highly intelligent, the people who are of average intelligence, the people who are below average intelligence. So when you are interacting with the students, how you take care of this ability level? You pose a question which is tough, which is difficult. So that should be reflected or assigned to a very bright student in the class. You have a very simple, easy question. You can assign to a below average. A question which is of average difficulty can be assigned to a person who is of average intelligence. And likewise, achievements. When you talk about high achievers, average achievers, and below average achievers. So while giving tasks, giving assignments, giving or posing questions, you can have simple to complex or easy to difficult questions and distribute them according to the difficulty level, or according to, ability level of the student. So gradually you can raise the difficulty level. Once the person is able to answer a very simple question, then you increase the difficulty level, then go to higher difficulty, higher, and so on. So you can gather this information from various sources, from the student himself, from the friends, from the family, from the school from which he has come. If he's a second year, third year student, then the previous 1 year record is available in the college. So you can get some of the information from the records which are available within the institution. Then comes the message, which we talked about yesterday. Message is a very important component. in the whole process of communication. And message needs to be structured, organized to ensure that it is neither overloaded nor underloaded. There is appropriate information which is given to the learner, and you need to sequence to facilitate learning. And one of the organizational patterns which is commonly used by teachers is topical organization. When I say topical organization, the topic is broken down into its constituent parts and arranged under headings and subheadings. Say, for example, we took the concept of stress and strain, and we say first the person would deal with the concept of stress, then the concept of strain. And when I say concept of strain, I say I deal with definition, explanation, and example. So I try to prepare the subheading. Then I go relationship between stress and strain. So I say the derivation part where I'll try to derive the relationship between stress and strain. Or I would give a graphical representation showing them the change in stress and strain, and then ask the student what kind of change they perceive in the other variable depending upon change in one variable. So how you are going to deal? So you are going to break down the topic into its constituent parts and arrange that topic into headings and subheadings, and it gives a facility to the learner. When you write the structure of your presentation on the left hand side of the whiteboard or the green board which you use in the classroom, then you write what is the structure of your presentation, and once you have completed the concept, you put a tick mark on the concept of stress, then go to the concept of strain. After completion of that, put a tick mark. So any student in the class will be able to keep pace with, even if for a second or a minute or few minutes, the attention is diverted. But once the person looks at the board, he can keep pace with, okay, ma'am has completed or sir has completed this. Now this is what is going on in the class. And it also helps the students to take notes, because when you try to categorize your material into headings, student also tries to take notes under headings and subheading. So there is a structure which is given to the message which is being transmitted. Chronological organization. May I ask the audience, what do you understand by chronology? What is chronological organization? Anybody would like to speak? Step by step. No. Anybody from the center would like to respond to what is chronological organization? Chronology refers to timeline. Say, for example, I'm dealing with the economic growth and development of the country, and I start with first 5-year plan, then second 5-year plan, third 5-year, fourth 5-year, fifth. Now I come to the 12th 5-year plan of the country, and I try to till date what has been the progress or what has been the change in or increase in the population of India. So I follow timeline. Likewise, in every discipline, when you are starting with machines, even when you deal with the history of machines or history of how the computer has grown over a period of time. So you start with what was stated as early 80s, then 90s, then 2000, then 2010, and now 2020, what will be the status of computers or any technology which is changing. You can always map it on a timeline. So timeline, when you are dealing with certain developments, historical developments, you follow a timeline. It is easy for the person to remember them. Journalistic organization. All of you might be reading the newspaper. Okay. A particular news answers few questions. Can you think of what are those questions which are answered by a news item? Yes, maybe any center would like to respond. If you are getting me, if you read a newspaper, the one particular news item answers some of the questions. What are those questions? Okay. नाम आपका? Sonika has very rightly said that what has happened, where it happened, when it happened, why did it happen, what were the consequences of it, how the situation could be controlled, and what should be the strategy to avoid this kind of incident in future. There are many, many instances where this kind of journalistic organization for organizing the content can be utilized. For example, you are dealing with disasters, you are dealing with incidents, you are dealing with cases where this kind of organization pattern can be used. For example, you're talking of the earthquakes. So you're giving an account of what happened in Latur. So you are writing when it happened, where it happened, why it happened, how the situation was controlled, and what future strategies have been taken. And when you write this account, you come out with a case which can be utilized in the classroom situation. Now here you're talking about, say for example, the what is going on in Iraq at present. So if you are going to write that, you can follow a journalistic organization, use it as a case in the classroom situation. Then it is very, very important that when you are teaching certain things, you try to follow psychological principles which we discussed again yesterday: simple to complex, easy to difficult, known to unknown, concrete to abstract, and from observation to reasoning. For example, when I say we have concrete things, like I'm naming all the machines which are used. So I'm talking about drilling machine, I'm talking about lathe machine, all these things. Without using the name in the class, I first take my students to the laboratory or the workshop. I show them the real lathe machine so that they can have an idea what lathe machine looks like. What are the various parts of the lathe machine? I show them the real thing and then try to give the parts of that machine. What we do normally, we take a diagram in the class. First we show the diagram and then we try to label those parts of the machine. Better would be if we show them the real things, that is the concrete thing, the referent which is available. And then we deal with certain abstract concepts, like you are dealing with in the mechanical itself. What are some of the, or your field is? Applied science. Can you give me examples of some abstract concepts in your applied science? English. Okay. So once we say applied, abstract or applied sciences, you talk about chemistry. You're talking about chemicals, you're talking about gases. These two things are abstract concepts. You cannot show, but you can explain with the help of definition. You say reaction. It is also a concept which is abstract. Let me take an example from civil. You have, when you talk about the wall, the roof, the floor, the columns, these are all concrete concepts. So first try to deal with concrete concepts. Then when you go to reinforcement, you talk about, this is defined concept, right? Or you talk about stress, that is defined concept. You talk about strain, that is defined concept. You talk about forces, shear force, bending movements, they are all what? The abstract concept. So when you are teaching a particular subject, make sure that you first deal with concrete concepts, then you move to abstract concepts. Or within a topic, if there are concrete concepts and abstract concepts, make sure you deal with concrete concepts first and then the abstract concepts. Observation to reasoning, that means if you really want to be effective, then first provide the experience to the learner. For example, you are showing that you said force is equal to mass and acceleration. Now I say a person is standing on the third floor of a building. He is having in one hand 100 kg ball, in another a 50 kg ball. The speed is the acceleration is the same, and what force will be exerted to throw the ball on the ground. Now you can see force is equal to mass into acceleration. And you first demonstrate that he is throwing the ball which is heavier would reach the ground early. Isn't it true? Then the person can see. Now you ask why it happened. So he'll give you the answer for this. So observation to reasoning. Or when you say two bodies, one submerges in the water, one floats on the water. So the concept, let the person observe that phenomena and then he's there. Likewise, there can be, say when you are teaching sciences or engineering, a can which is empty, it's rotated. It doesn't rotate. But if you fill that can with 50% of the water, 50% of the can is filled with water, then if you rotate that, that dances, that revolves. Why it happened? The center of gravity has changed, right? So first provide the experience, first provide the exposure to the student to observe a phenomena, then pose questions why and how. Then you remain effective. Another one is when you are trying to communicate to the audience, always try to keep it simple and short. If you can say the same thing in fewer words, what Mr. Singla has been referring to yesterday, the brevity. Be brief and don't elaborate if it is not required by the audience. So try to be brief, simple, and short messages which can convey the meaning, and always try to use a language which is comprehensible to the learner. That's why yesterday there was a little discussion Hindi English. So if you can use the language which is known to them, which makes them understand the topic easily, try to use that language, but not all the time, but you can use a mixed language because the medium of instruction would be English. So you have to train your students in that also. Whatever you say has to be grammatically correct. If I say there are one student sitting in the ETV studio, क्या हुआ? गलत हो गया. And you are stuck up. The teacher doesn't know the verb which is to be used. There is only one student sitting in the class is correct. But when I say there are one student sitting in the ETV studio, you are stuck up. And unnecessarily, it creates a hindrance in the process of communication. Whatever we say ought to be technically correct. I'm going to use meter. I would say meter. If I'm going to use a meter, I'm going to use the word a meter. If I'm going to use voltmeter, I'm going to use the word voltmeter. So I cannot interchangeably use these words. Meter की जगह पे a meter और a meter की जगह पे voltmeter. So as a teacher, I must have adequate knowledge of the right or correct technical terminology, and that should be utilized. Right? Then now we come to what we said in the beginning. Verbal communication is only the tip of the iceberg. The remaining iceberg is non-verbal communication. So 7% is the effect of your verbal content on the effectiveness. 93% can be attributed to your non-verbal communication. And here, the very first you see that you can classify the non-verbal behavior into 5 major categories. Your facial expression, gestures, body postures, eye contact, they combined together are labeled as kinesics. Second is your tonal quality, the volume, the pitch, the articulation, the pronunciation. That is your paralanguage. Nonverbal category is paralanguage. Then the clothes you wear, the dress you wear, the accessories you carry to the class, clothing, jewelry, cosmetics, tattoos, piercing, hairstyle, etc., etc., they come under artifacts. And chronomics refer to the time dimension, at what time the communication is taking place. And proxemics refers to the spatial dimension, how much distance you maintain from your students, right? Now here, because I have only one party, Paramjit hai ge? Ajo, ajo. So friends, I'm going to give a small demonstration for 1 minute, right? Aao ji ma'am. Ajo, Paramjit, 1 minute. कितने गए? Okay, okay. So friends, what I am going to do is, I have requested two of the participants here. One participant, one the technical person from ETV, to occupy the seats with back to back. And now I am going to request them to speak for 1 minute. So bolo ji, start ho jao.
Hello, ma'am. How are you? How are you? आपको सेशन कैसा लग रहा है? Okay. Anything else?
Thank you very much. Now, before you leave, Sonika ma'am, how did you feel about this situation? Idhar aa jao, if you will be audible to the audience. ऊंचा ऊंचा बोलो, सबको सुनना चाहिए the sentence. जो आपने फील किया, अच्छा चलो मुझे बता दो, मैं बोल देती हूँ. आपको कैसा लगा?
थोड़ा सा नॉर्मल सा लगा मुझे तो मैम, थोड़ा सा नर्वस तो नहीं
क्यों
थी।
क्यों नर्वस लग रहे थे?
एक्चुअली मैम फर्स्ट टाइम कैमरे के सामने
एक कैमरे के सामने, तो बैक टू बैक बैठने से कोई असर नहीं पड़ा? Did it affect the communication?
यस मैम, मतलब अगर हम
Face
टू फेस करके आई कांटेक्ट के साथ करते देन इट्स वेरी गुड.
Okay, thank you. So friends, now she doesn't come out with, but normally what happens, and this is what happened, you see, I requested them to continue for 1 minute, but they could not. And she said, I have nothing to add to it. This is because when you are not able to see the facial expression of a person, you are not able to maintain an eye contact, then it becomes really difficult to find out whether the other person is with you, whether the person is able to understand you or not, and then the communication stops. So this is the very first principle: maintain an eye contact with the students. And what happens in the classroom situation when we are dealing with our students? Some teachers only interact with part of the class. They are either maintaining with the right hand side or with the left hand side of the class, or with the first benchers, they are not able to have a dispersed eye contact in the class. And what happens? The students lack attention. Their interest is not there in the subject, where the teacher is not able to maintain an eye contact with them. And as teacher, when you are not having eye contact, your motivation also goes down, because you are not able to get or obtain the feedback from your students. And sometimes it happens that a teacher goes with the notes in the classroom situation. And when you are carrying the notes, it becomes a habit to read through the notes. And when you start reading from the notes, then you lose eye contact with your student. And that is very demotivating for the learners. And another is that sometimes the teacher makes a classroom corner as a memory tool. Up, just reflect back, and you are sitting in an examination. There is a question which has come. Now you are trying to recall what was written in the book, and you have a eye contact either in a corner or शून्य में आप झांकते हैं, yeah, you are lost and you are trying to recall the visual imagery of your book, what was written on the page number so and so, where the diagram was drawn, formula was written, and you are trying to, and this happens with the teachers also. Sometimes when they're not very sure of the content which they are dealing with and they recall, so they make the corner of the classroom as the memory tool. And then also they lose eye contact with the student. Or you carry a diagram and you start explaining on the PowerPoint projection, which is not correct, because when you're using LCD projector, the monitor is before you. You can explain by looking at the students from the screen of the monitor rather than looking at the PowerPoint projection. Or you are using a board where you are trying to draw a very complex diagram, and then also you lose eye contact with your class. So never do that. Draw the diagram in parts. First draw something and try to explain, then go to the second, third, and you have interaction. And stand in a way that you don't have a back towards the class, right? So maintain an eye contact, avoid this kind of situation which is demotivating for the students, and they lose interest, their attention is diverted to other issues. Now what do you see in the figure? What does the first image show? Yes? पहला image क्या show कर रहा है? मुस्कुरा रहा है. Pleasant smile on the face of the individual. दूसरा क्या show कर रहा है? सोच में है. And third one? डर गया. Afraid of, fearful. Right? So you can say your face is the index of your mind. Whatever feelings exist within you, they get reflected on your facial expression. If you are internally happy, that smile, that pleasant look will be there. If you are satisfied, even then the pleasant look would be there. But if you are feeling insecure in a given situation, you are afraid of, then that fear will be there on your face. पता चल जाता है. And अगर आप घबराए हुए भी हैं, you are under stress, you are under anxiety, that घबराहट will be, घबराहट को क्या बोलते हैं इंग्लिश में? Yes, nervousness would be reflected on your face. And if you are sad, something has gone wrong in life or at college or at home, then maybe your look would be very gloomy look you are giving to the other person. And the students are wise enough to make out whether the teacher is happy, whether the teacher is sad, or whether the teacher is angry, or whether the teacher is nervous. And remember, first day when many of us took up the profession of teaching, and the first day in the class, many of us felt nervous. Despite the fact that we knew the subject, we were not able to transact openly. I can give my own example. I went to the class. I had in the class 50% of students whom I knew because they were my class fellows. Other 50%, they were new. People I knew. I just maintained eye contact with the strangers who were sitting in the class. My rate of delivery was very fast because I wanted to finish up. I never wanted to give any time to the student to think over, to pose questions to me. And I didn't elaborate or give many examples in the class. I was a bit nervous, conscious of the situation that I am teaching a post-graduation class, and then it took me a week's time to settle down in the class. I was doing my PhD at that time and I was teaching the postgraduate diploma in guidance and counseling. Now, when this happens, there is effect. The rate of delivery was fast. I never assured that the students have learned. I never interacted with them. I just explained one-way communication was there. At times it happened that when we are not confident and we are nervous, or we are conscious of the situation, we are feeling insecure in the situation, then we make mistakes. Mistakes may be grammatical mistakes, maybe technical mistakes we make. We look for, try to find out appropriate words to convey the message. लोग कुछ कहते हैं कि sometimes we think in Punjabi and think in Hindi, then translate that Hindi or Punjabi into English. This normally doesn't happen. If you want to have fluency, you think in English and you translate in English. It cannot be that you think in Punjabi, translated it into English. But yes, nervousness adversely affects your communication. So try to control your emotions before you enter into the classroom situation. आप pleasant look, smile लेके जाएंगे. Students will be forthcoming. They will interact with you. They'll share their problems, they'll share their apprehensions, and there will be two-way communication. If you are angry with the students, then that anger must be reflected. ये नहीं हो सकता कि आप कह रहे हो, you have given the date for the assignment. None of the student came up with the assignment on the day. So you are really angry with the group. अब उनको आप डांट तो लगा रहे हो, लेकिन फेस पे आपके स्माइल है. क्यों, क्या हो गया, आपने असाइनमेंट नहीं दी? Now this kind of message will not have the desirable effect on the student. Then you should be serious, and that anger must get exhibited in your tonal quality or maybe on your facial expression, and then the message will be conveyed to the learner. Or something serious has happened in the class, two students fighting with each other. So you are serious, you are angry. That time your tonal quality, your facial expression should let them know that you are really angry with those students, right? So depending upon the situation, try to exhibit appropriate emotions. In the अगर suppose कर लीजिए किसी की एक्सीडेंट हो गया, अब आप उसका हाल पूछ रहे हो बच्चे का, बस सिर्फ टांग पे चोट आई है, बस मतलब that means you want that he should have more injuries rather than simply having a chot on the leg. So don't do this. Our facial expression means you cannot have, you are going for expressing sorrow on certain things, but there is a smile on the face. So your words and your facial expression, there is a mismatch between the two. So the person can understand. Or I normally give an example, two of you go for an interview. One gets selected, another gets rejected. And tomorrow morning you are going to meet each other. अब congratulate तो करना है. आप कहते हो मुझसे सोनिका कोई मैं congratulate कर. I'm very happy that you got selected. भाई, your facial expression tells something different, and non-verbal behavior is more louder than, कहते हैं ना, actions are louder than words. कोई चीज हो जाती. Use appropriate gestures. Whatever you say, the gestures lend support to that. Small, my hand goes like this. Up above in the sky, my finger goes like this. Distant, I just point out. Or I say turn towards right, turn towards left. A very big or very large. So if you recall, there used to be a Maruti Esteem car advertisement in the TV. A small child used to come My papa has a big car, and her hands used to flow like this. And without listening to the child, with the words which she was using, you could make out a big car, right? So when you say nearby, nearby, so your gestures nearby, or you are focusing on stressing on something, your hand goes like this, right? Stressing on something. So your gestures which you use, they convey many things to the student. And once they are listening to you, they are observing your gestures, they'll be in a better position to understand. So when you use gestures, they create visual imagery. So it is easy for the person to retain that information. आपको words तो भूल जाएंगे, लेकिन action याद रह जाएगा कि उसने क्या करा था action साथ में. And if you can recall that action, you can recall the material also. So use appropriate gestures when you are there, but make sure that the gestures you use, they are culturally acceptable. Fine. Now this behavior you need to avoid. Hands in the pocket, that means you are referring to closed communication. You are not open to the viewpoint of others. You are not open to the feedback from the others, and you don't invite any interaction from others. Or you are standing like this. Again, bossism, authoritarian, whatever I say is correct. मैं क्यों जाऊं? आप आके मुझे पूछ लो, मिल लो. I am the boss. And closed. वो खुद नहीं किसी से कुछ अपना बोल देगा, बस किसी की सुननी नहीं है इस बंदे ने. ठीक है? So this kind of behavior needs to be avoided if you really want to have interactive two-way communication in the classroom situation. What do you see here? What do you see? Yes? Bolo? What do you see here? क्या नजर आ रहा है? सीधा तो लिखा हुआ है, pay attention to your posture. Do you think posture makes any difference to your communication? कैसे?
When some students come to me मेरे पास आके अगर एक student है for example he wants to me कि मैम मुझे ये बता दो आप या ये करवा दो आप, ठीक है. अगर तो वो जैसे एक स्टूडेंट है वो स्ट्रेट खड़ा है जैसे बीच वाला पर्सन, ठीक है. इट मीन्स कि he or she is confident about concept about something.
Okay.
जो फर्स्ट वाला पर्सन है जैसे कुछ स्टूडेंट है फील नर्वस, देन उसे पता चलता है कि उसको कुछ अलग वे से हैंडल करना, स्टूडेंट को बहुत ज्यादा नर्वस है उसको.
Okay, thank you. Here we are talking about the speaker. So even the teacher's posture conveys many things. Your posture is a symbol of dynamism, energy, and enthusiasm. The erect the posture, the higher is the level of confidence, the higher is the level of energy. And when you carry that energy and enthusiasm to teach the student, that is obnoxious. And your students, they get motivated to listen to you. Say for example, आप lousy सा एक structure लेके जाते हो क्लास में, कहाँ से आ गए? सो जाओ घर जाके, रेस्ट कर लो जाके. That is the kind of response you get from the students. But if you stand erect, you are symbol of dynamism. So always try to adopt the erect posture while you are standing in the class. Never occupy a seat unless and until there is an emergency. To sit in the class, avoid that. If you stand, then there is always a possibility that you will also move in the class. And a teacher needs to shift position from one angle to another. अगर मैं 45 मिनट 50 मिनट एक ही साइड पे खड़ी हूँ, so all your eyes are glued to this direction. But if I start moving some way, you also move with me. So there will not be fatigue which is caused while standing on one side of the class. So posture You should try to adopt an erect posture as far as possible and try to avoid, because this is going to have the health hazards also, right? Then be audible. Now earlier the class size was 30. Our teacher was able to convey messages and the sound used to reach the 30 students in the class without any support. But think of a situation where you have 80 or 120 students sitting in the class. Not all the speakers would be able to reach the last person sitting in the class. So what should be done? What should be done? हाँ जी बोलो ना हाँ जी. So if you really want to remain audible, then you can use public address system. And today you have wireless mics available. So use that wireless mic and be audible to the student. When the student will be able to listen to the verbal symbols which you are speaking, only then those verbal symbols will get interpreted. And once they get interpreted, the process of learning would start. Otherwise, if the words are not discernible to the human ear, then the learning process will not start. Fine. So remain audible. What is articulation and what is pronunciation? क्या होती है articulation and pronunciation? आप इंग्लिश के हो.
Articulation is pronunciation होता है कि way of जो talking है हमारा way of speaking कि किसी word को हमने कैसे pronounce करना है.
Articulation.
Articulation होता है जैसे sound से related होता है something.
Okay, phonetics, right? So where is the stress? How much is the opening of jaws? Where is the placement of tongue? Whether you inhale or you exhale. And many of the common words, they get mispronounced by the public. I'm just taking few examples where you can see, I just show one word. Two of you are going to speak it, right? Sir? Mr. Naresh, what is written? Huh? आप बोलो. धीरे से क्यों बोल रहे हो? So this word which I have used here, normally when a common person speaks, he says journal. It is not journal, generally. N comes before R. Okay, जी. देखो रुक के क्यों बोल रहे हो? So you have to pay attention to how you pronounce. Mispronunciation. Mispronunciation. Okay? जी. Single R की sound आती है, हेयर की. One of you can speak. Simple word है. अड़ गए हो सब लोग हैं. चलो ये बोलो. Okay. Some of the people say Linux, others say Linux. And it is a noun. It doesn't matter whether you say Linux or Linux, but the correct pronunciation is Linux. Right? ये तो आप सबको पता है. बोलो. Stress on B. Boolean. Boolean algebra भूल गए? हाँ जी. What is it? T is silent. Repo. 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 What is this? Geology नहीं.
Geology.
No, geology नहीं है. पहले G कहाँ आ रहा है? Z आ रहा है. Zoology.
पोलिंग सर मतलब ऐसे लिखते हैं, ऐसे लिखते हैं।
लिखते तो ऐसे ही, बोलना भी आना चाहिए. If you read down the last word, which is written here, perception कहाँ लिखा है? Just see the word and speak. Prescription. Prescription नहीं. Normally जब R E या ER की sound हम दे देते हैं, that is the wrong one. So then it is important that we also pay attention to our rate of delivery. Some people speak very fast, others speak very slow. Now, say for example, I have to give the definition of the communication. I say communication is the process of sending, receiving messages through channel with some noise, with some effect, and some opportunity for feedback. Now see, the continuity is lost. If I go very fast, communication is the process of sending and receiving messages through a channel with some noise, with some opportunity for feedback. Now this is too fast. A person may not understand. So your rate of delivery has to be between 90 words per minute to 110 words per minute. Human ear can discern 200 words per minute. If you have seen the stenographers who take dictation, they can discern 200 words per minute. But my role as a teacher is to make the student understand. I can neither be too fast or nor I can be too slow. I have to adopt the appropriate rate of delivery. And if you're dealing with simple things, rate of delivery can be little faster. When you're dealing with complex things, the difficult things, the rate of delivery has to be slower. But make sure that you remain between 90 to 110 words per minute. Vary your pitch. Now here, I would like to give an example that if you speak at the same pitch, sir, introduce करो. नहीं, I think it is. Sir, 1 minute लगेगा, आप इधर आ जाओ please. So when you speak at the same pitch, for example, the effectiveness of communication is dependent upon 3 factors: the verbal content, it has an impact up to 7%, the tonal quality has an impact up to 38%, and the non-verbal behavior of the individual has an impact up to 55%. Now, if I go on speaking like this at the same pitch, monotony and boredom will creep in the class. But if I bring variation, when I start a sentence, the pitch is lowest. When I'm in the middle of the sentence, the pitch is the highest. When I'm closing the sentence, the pitch again drops down. If I follow this sequence, then my students in the class remain attentive. I'm able to draw their attention. Otherwise, they'll go to sleep. Use pauses. The best example here is Roko mat jane do. Roko mat jane do. Can you differentiate between the meaning of 2 sentences? Or what the same? Yes. When I say, listen again, Roko mat jane do. Roko mat jane do.
According to situation, मतलब थोड़ा pause लेना चाहिए.
नहीं, पहले सेंटेंस क्या कहता है? मीनिंग एक ही है?
No.
क्या डिफरेंस क्या है? जी नरेश,
किसी तरह का gap नहीं आना.
अरे नहीं, मैंने 2 सेंटेंस बोले हैं, इन दोनों का क्या मीनिंग है?
एक बार तो आपने कहा रोको मत जाने दो,
राइट.
उसको मत जाने दो. एक बार कह रहे रोको मत जाने दो.
Yeah, so thank you very much, sir. This is the difference, that where you put a pause, it changes the meaning of the sentence. And when I can give you another sentence, the teacher said the student is an idiot. The teacher said the student is an idiot. एक सेंटेंस में टीचर इडियट है, एक सेंटेंस में स्टूडेंट इडियट. So where you put a pause, that brings a change in the sentence to make sure that when you're using a language, whether Hindi, English or Punjabi, you use appropriate pauses. Pause also helps the teacher. When you have explained a piece of information, give a pause. It will give time to the student to assimilate that knowledge. So he'll be able to relate the new information to what he already knows. He tries to associate, he tries to think over whether what has been said by the teacher has certain logic and consistency. So the student is able to evaluate what you are speaking. So that is very, very important. So pauses can be used at appropriate places to give time to the student to assimilate. Then use conversational mode. You can use different modes. Whispering is one. Whispering क्या होती है? कानाफूसी, right. When you go very near to a student and उसके कान में जाके आप कुछ बोलते हो, unnecessarily you arouse anxiety among others. दूसरा सोचता है पता नहीं मैम उसको क्या बता रही है. What is it that she is sharing with one student and she is not sharing with the whole class? Try to avoid this situation when you are in a social situation. दूसरे एंड पे आप देखते हैं yelling. Yelling is चिल्लाना. Never ever enter into yelling in a social situation because you have no control over the words, you have no control over your facial expression, you have no control on your body movements. So in the classroom situation, these two are to be avoided. A teacher should remain between being soft to being loud. Why soft? When a student is in a problem, you maintain your cool and you interact with that person very softly. Your tonal quality has to be very soft. अगर आप थोड़ा सा भी गुस्सा कर जाते हैं, the student get confused and he is not able to share anything with you, right? When the student is repeating the same question again and again, maintain your cool. Be soft. Conversational mode, as if you are talking one-to-one with the student. So this is the most frequently used teaching mode, conversational mode. उनको लगना चाहिए आप जैसे एक से बात करें वैसे कर रहे हैं. Loud, at times the teacher can be louder. When you are talking to a large group, when you want to assert something, you want to put emphasis on certain thing, you can be louder. You want to draw the attention of your student in the class, you can be louder. The student is distant, you can be little louder. So conversational mode is the most frequently used one, but remain within being soft to being loud. Never ever use whispering and yelling. So you can see your dress also counts. Classroom situation is a formal situation and you ought to use formal dress and you cannot go to the class casually. Casually, when I say the students are coming in jeans, t-shirts, the teacher is also going in jeans and t-shirts. Try to avoid. That will first differentiate you from the student. One thing, because many young teachers are joining the system of teaching profession and they come the same way dressed as the students are coming to the class. So identity differentiation is also sometimes a problem. First you overcome that. And it is said that if there are 30 students in the class, 60 eyes are observing you. If there are 60 students, 120 eyes are observing you from toe to head, right? So pay attention to how you are dressed. And it is very, very important for the teachers that you don't use very gaudy colors, bright colors, but you are pleasantly in some light colors, which are very appealing to the eye, and you have the matching trousers and the shirts. Green के साथ red पहन के नहीं जा सकते हो. So Give example, light trousers, dark trousers, light shirts. And likewise, for the ladies, it is very important that you don't go dressed like a model in the classroom situation. You give a very professional look when you go to the class. Otherwise, the students will be paying more attention to your dress and less attention to what you say. And this has happened. I give you one example. I was doing my PG diploma, and my teacher went to USA, and she came back from the States in mid 70s. And while she was writing on the board, we could see that she was carrying a green nail polish. At that time, people didn't use the green nail polish. It was maroon, pink, or the skin color which was in vogue. And we all the time discussed that, criticized our teacher for wearing that green color, and we never listened to what she was teaching us. One teacher, she used to come on the scooter. And when you are driving a scooter, Vespa she used to drive, and she used to tuck in her pleats inside, कि break में नहीं आ जाए, वहाँ फट नहीं जाए साड़ी. And one day she came to the class with pleats tucked in. And again, it was looking very odd in the class. And again, the girl students, they were discussing that issue and again didn't pay attention to the thing. And now this is a trend. As many fingers you have, those many rings you carry to the class. Please avoid a minimal jewelry. You cannot carry on with this kind or heavy jewelry. Another is respect the distance zone. When you have assigned a class task to the student, don't go so near to the student that he becomes conscious. होता क्या है, बच्चा काम छोड़ के he starts looking either at the teacher or looks at the ground. He becomes conscious. कहते हैं you encroach upon the personal space. Many a times you must have heard this sentence, क्या सिर के ऊपर चढ़े आ रहे हो, होता है. And we want that our personal space should not be encroached upon by the other. Same is true that as a teacher, you should try to maintain a minimum distance from your students. If you are talking to one student, arm's length, you have to be there. If it's a group of 8 to 10 students, at least you have 2 to 4 feet distance between you and the group. If it is a large group, 8 to 10 feet distance is what is minimally required. So try to maintain that distance so that you don't make other person conscious. So respect the distance zone. Another very important principle in oral communication is operate from I am okay, you are okay life position. Now these life positions have been given by Eric Berne. Eric Berne has said that there is perception about oneself. You try to assess your own capabilities, strengths and weaknesses, and either you have a positive notion about yourself, that is you say I am okay, I can contribute, I can take my decision, I can do my work and I can live a happy life. Other side is not okay, that I can't do anything in life. This is the kind of notion you possess. You also have perception about others. When you say you have perception about others, again you view the other individual either as okay or not okay. So there emerge 4 quadrants. You can operate from I am okay, you are okay life position. You can operate from I am okay, you are not okay. You can operate from I am not okay, you are okay, or I am not okay, you are not okay. So what happens? आज जब आप क्लास में जाते हो, many of us are going to the class with the notion that students do not know anything. They are simply here sitting and listening to me. And most of the time it is one-way communication that takes place. Because we assume that at class 12 they have not learnt anything. Never go with this notion to the class. Always go with the notion that the person who is sitting in the class has some knowledge, some skills, and some attitude. He has certain strengths and certain weaknesses. So try to operate from I am okay, you are okay life position. You will give respect to the other individual. You will give unconditional respect to the other individual. Your communication will be two-way. Your relationships will be cordial. If you operate from I am okay, you are not okay, then you adopt authoritarian stance in the class. आप कहते हो बच्चों को तो कुछ नहीं आता, जो मुझे आता है वो फाइनल है. So you don't give opportunity to others. ठीक है? So operate from I am okay, you are okay life position. Be friendly, free yourself from biases and prejudices. Yesterday we had taken up this issue. When you are trying to interact, and if you are biased towards a caste, creed, color, or gender, suppose a person has negative attitude towards women, right? वो क्या करेगा? अगर ग्रुप में 2-3 women हैं या girl students are there, say 10, and rest of them are the boys, all examples he is picking up from the field of boys. He is all the time addressing the boys. He is trying to involve the boys in the discussion, but he is trying to ignore the girls. It can be reverse. A person who is having a more favorable attitude towards girls and less favorable towards boys, the boys will meet the same behavior of the teacher. Or say a person belongs to reserved category and you go with the notion he doesn't know anything, he doesn't have any resources, he will not be able to contribute anything. If you go by that notion, you ignore that child in the class, that student, and you will not involve him. And unnecessarily you create a kind of environment where the student develops unfavorable attitude towards the teacher, towards the subject, and maybe towards the education system as a whole. So what is needed is, if you really want to have two-way communication, open communication, informal communication, you must treat the students friendly. Your approach should be friendly, and you should free yourself from any biases and prejudices. And those should be left outside the classroom. Never bring those biases and prejudices in the classroom situation. कहते हैं उसकी चुप्पी बहुत कुछ कह गई. ठीक कहते हैं ना? कुछ भी ना बोलो, but you remain quiet in a situation that also speaks volumes. So use silence to your advantage. अब आपने सपोज कर लीजिए सवाल पूछा, बच्चे का आंसर नहीं आ रहा है, वो भी चुप है, आप 1 मिनट के लिए चुप रहिए. हम क्या होता है, इमीडिएट रिएक्शन होता है. You don't know anything, you have not understood anything, and you just shout at the child and he becomes utterly conscious. वो और भी confused हो जाता है. Another thing, you are going to share a serious experience with the students. Maintain silence for a fraction of second and then you say. अब देखिए, अगर कोई unpleasant message भी हम देते हैं, we first remain silent for a fraction of second and then convey. So silence or silence at times give time to the student to think, to ponder upon, to relate the new information with the what they already know or the previous knowledge. So that is important. Provide time for assimilation, I've already discussed. One of the principle is because it is two-way process. So providing and obtaining feedback is an essential element in the process of communication. So when we say feedback, feedback refers to knowledge of results. That means you give information to somebody through a response, and when you get a response, you tell the person whether he's right or wrong. And it is not that you have to simply tell the person whether he's right or wrong, but the feedback you provide needs to be task related. Many teachers make very journalized comments in the class. दे से आप तो डफर हो, आपको कुछ नहीं आता, आप जीवन में कुछ नहीं कर पाएंगे. नाउ दिस काइंड ऑफ अ कमेंट can ruin the life of the student, kills the motivation, kills the spark, right? So what you need to do, only give task related information to the student. आपने प्रॉब्लम्स दी थी, आप सिर्फ उस पे सीमित रहिए कि बेटा आप ये प्रॉब्लम नहीं कर पाए, right? And tell them what part of the answer is right, what part of the answer is wrong. Be specific and tell how to improve upon the wrong part. That is, give corrective feedback. This is what, and the feedback has to be immediate. You cannot delay. Delayed feedback defeats the purpose of the feedback. आज मैंने आपको रिपोर्ट दी लिख के, असाइनमेंट दी, आपने हफ्ते बाद रिटर्न कर दी, कुछ नहीं बोला, ग्रेड दे के मुझे दे दिया. But after a month's time, you are giving me the feedback कि आपने जो असाइनमेंट लिखी थी उसमें ये चीजें गलत थी. अब ये it has no meaning because by that time I have forgotten what you have written. So don't do that. Then last part I'll say how to improve upon one's skills. ठीक है, सबसे आसान तरीका, आज you all carry mobile phones, you can record your video. Ask one of your colleagues to sit in the class. Just record what is happening in the classroom. Maybe not everything, half an hour की आपकी recording कर ले. Try to obtain the feedback. अपने friend से, अपने घर से, अपने एक आधे student जो अच्छा student है, who will give you the objective feedback, उसको दिखा दीजिए. Take the feedback. What are the strengths? What are the weaknesses? उसको आइडेंटिफाई करने के लिए देन यू शुड पुट डेलिब्रेट अटेम्प्ट ऑन इम्प्रूविंग योर वीकनेसेस. ठीक है, और उसके लिए क्या करना पड़ेगा, प्रैक्टिस प्रैक्टिस प्रैक्टिस. अगर आप सोचते हैं द लैंग्वेज, द वोकैबुलरी इज वीक, you are not able to find appropriate words, try to improve upon the vocabulary. If you think the rate of delivery is faster, try to work on the rate of delivery. If you think the pronunciation is wrong, then you try to improve upon the pronunciation by looking at the dictionary, by asking 2 or 3 persons to speak the word, pick up that, and you try to practice the right way of communicating to the students. That will help. Another strategy which you can, other strategy which you can adopt is each one of us try to have a role model in life. होता है सबका, किसी के टीचर होते हैं, किसी की मदर होती है, पेरेंट फादर होता है, या कोई चाचा होता है, कोई डॉक्टर होता है, कोई लॉयर होता है, कोई मे बी द लीडर होता है. So try to identify who's your role model, who has impressed you with respect to the oral communication skills, and try to follow that person for a month's time. Deliberate attempt है, आप उसको ध्यान से सुनो, वो किन वर्ड्स का प्रयोग करता है, उसकी प्रोनाउंसिएशन कैसी है, रेट ऑफ डिलीवरी कैसी है, कौन सी एग्जाम्पल्स वो पिकअप करता है, अपने ऑडियंस को कैसे इन्वॉल्व करता है, एंड सो ऑन. इफ दैट गिव्स यू एन अपॉर्चुनिटी. अगर ऑडियंस नहीं है, ओके, द अदर पैरामीटर्स यू ट्राई टू फाइंड आउट. इमिटेट द रोल मॉडल. कहते हैं स्टील गुड आइडियाज शेमलेसली. गुड आइडियाज, नॉट द मटेरियल थिंग्स, एंड उनको आप अपने ऊपर अप्लाई करो. प्रैक्टिस प्रैक्टिस प्रैक्टिस, एंड दिस इज द ओनली डिक्टम, बिकॉज communication skill, when you say, is a skill which can be honed through practice. So try to practice the right kind of behavior, you will be able to improve upon your communication skills. So this is, friends, all about the oral communication, one component, that is speaking skills. एक ये अगर आप देखना चाहो तो वर्ड्स हैं हमारे, इसको छोड़ ही दो अभी तो. आई थिंक आई विल नॉट डील विद इट, हैज नो रेलेवेंस नाउ हियर. ठीक है, सो दिस इज ऑल अबाउट द ओरल कम्युनिकेशन स्किल्स. इफ यू हैव एनी क्वेश्चन, यू आर वेलकम. Ji, any of the audience member would like to pose a question? Ji, no question? Okay. The audience at various center, if they have any question, they are welcome. हाँ जी, if there is Mr. Singla, सर ने आना है जी, चले गए? उन्होंने इंट्रोड्यूस नहीं कराना सी, मेरे ख्याल इस कोर्स से होए नहीं ना? वो नहीं, मैं तो क्या सी करा देनी आ फिर ये। हाँ जी, so no question is there. So friends, Kanna ji, we wait for 2 minutes. If the director is here, he may like to interact with you. Otherwise, we'll break for a cup of tea. ये तो बोल दे ही नहीं। मैं वो मेरे को सेंटेंस के ना नहीं है, BIT RK GIT RGK है ना? ले आओ जी। All the 13 are there?
Yeah.
11 are there. Northern India Engineering College. Do we have any question? Yes or no? Please tell me. Is there any question from Northern India Engineering College, Delhi?
Hello, ma'am. Good morning.
Hanji, good morning.
I'm Jamuna from Northern India Engineering College.
Ji.
There is no question as such, and it was a wonderful session. I would like to add upon one more point. Because
Sure, ma'am.
You have told I mean, there should be a role model, and they have to just record their voice. And I also add upon, I used to tell my students, stand in front of the mirror when you go for any presentation.
Yes, thank you very much. Because when you practice, it is better to stand against in front of the mirror, see your reflection, find out what is your facial expression, what kind of gestures you use, how you look, so you can get the feedback from the mirror itself. Fine, thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Any other question? No? Okay, Ganga Technical Campus. Okay, Bharat Institute of Technology, Meerut. Ji.
It's good morning, ma'am.
Good morning.
I'm calling from Shri Balaji Technical Campus.
Okay, go ahead, ma'am.
Ma'am, I had a question regarding today's session.
Sure,
You
please.
have beautifully explained organizing the message.
Yes.
Fine. So you have given 3 points: topical organization, chronological organization, and journalistic organization. And you have asked regarding journalistic organization.
Right.
But we are not clear regarding that. Could you give an example regarding journalistic?
Sure. When we talk about journalistic organization, it answers questions related to what happened, where it happened, when it happened, who was involved in it. And I took an example of, say, earthquake. We had an incident which took place in Latur, Ahmedabad, or you can think of what happened in Uttarakhand right now, or you can think of tsunami which happened in Goa and Andaman and Nicobar. You can think of a situation when we talk about what happened in Japan, the nuclear reactors exploded and the kind of devastation that took place. Now, if I want to give this kind of a message, this message can be organized following a journalistic organization. What happened, where it happened, who was involved, what were the reasons for that, what were the consequences of that, how the situation was controlled, and what future strategy. And ultimately, you come out with a case of that situation or an incident. So, journalistic organization you can use while referring to incidents, cases, disasters, happenings, etc. Am I clear, ma'am?
Thank you, ma'am. Thanks.
Okay, another could be that nowadays we are using concept maps. So you can also think of developing concept maps for the topic you are going to teach and then use it to your advantage. The students also learn quickly with the help of concept maps. That is the latest thing which has come into. Thank you very much. So anybody from Jaipur Engineering College? Do we have any question? None? Okay, Riyad Bara Institute of Engineering and Nanotechnology, are you there? No. Vidya Bhavan Polytechnic, Riyad Bara, is there any question? Or Vidya Bhavan Polytechnic, do we have any question? Khali? जी विद्या भवन पॉलिटेक्निक कोई अटेंड नहीं कर रहा सेशन. Then we have Birla Technical Training Institute, Pilani, Rajasthan, BTTI. जी, is there any question? No, दो बंदे बैठे. None. JCDM, Sirsa. JCDM Engineering College, Sirsa, are you there? हाँ जी मैम थोड़ा सा लाउडर हो जाइए. नहीं मैम आपकी आवाज नहीं आ रही है. इनबिल्ट माइक यूज कर लीजिए. हाँ जी नाउ इट इज ओके. इट इज ओके. हाँ जी बोलिए. नो क्वेश्चन. नो क्वेश्चन. Okay, no question, thank you. Then Marudhar Engineering College, Bikaner. None. Maharishi Urban College. Marudhar Engineering College, if you have a question, go ahead. Good morning. जी. हाँ जी. सर ऐसे है अगर तो just for a fraction of second there is a talk between the two students, you can ignore it. But if it prolongs, you need to point out to the students to remain quiet, or you pose a question to the student to draw his or her attention to what you are teaching. So it depends upon the duration for which that noise has been created by the student. Okay. Any question from Maharishi Irvin College? No? Are you there, Maharishi Irvin? हाँ या ना तो बोल दो भाई. Riyadh Institute of Engineering and Information Technology, Ropar. नहीं दो है रियाद. Okay, RKGIT, Rajkumar Goyal Institute of Technology, Ghaziabad. ये तो पूछ लिया सी इन्होंने तो.
Hello.
जी, good morning.
Yes, good morning, ma'am.
हाँ जी.
I'm calling from Northern India Engineering College.
जी.
I do have one question.
Right, please go ahead.
Actually, sometimes means actually we are having suppose door, D-O-O-R, we are calling it as a door. And similarly, if we are pronouncing similarly in the word P-O-O-R, but we are pronouncing it as poor. So actually, my question is there any kind of rules and regulation for that we can pronounce any word?
सर ऐसा है इंग्लिश लैंग्वेज में रूल्स एंड रेगुलेशंस हैं and we have a session on phonetics also. So, pronunciation, we have a session. So tomorrow morning, so you will know what are the rules which are followed. But English में थोड़ा सा तो problem है, poor and do, and you have Chopra and chemical. So why not Copra and chemi? So it is a problem in English language, but not in others. So very true, but there are rules being followed.
So such type of misconception or many such type of things are there, ma'am. So
Certainly, certainly. I think each language has its own syntax and semantics. And I think when we talk about English, now people are going to simplify that. So we are not now restricted to this. And you have known that USA pronunciation has now been accepted. The spellings have been accepted. The language which we use in day-to-day life, some of the words get accepted in due course of time. So there are changes which are taking place. So let's see, sometimes a new language may emerge which is more simplified than what we have at present, the UK English or US English.
thank you, ma'am. This is the question I want to ask you. Thank you, ma'am.
Okay, thank you, sir. So I think, friends, we finished this session. Thank you very much for participating in the session. And now we